Hello, parents. I am so excited to be joining you all this afternoon with our wonderful colleagues from around campus. My name is Carnell McConnell Black, and I use he, him pronouns, and I serve as the Vice President for Student Life here at the college. So we know there are a lot of questions on your mind as we start the fall 2020 semester. And so today I'll be facilitating the panel. And again, I am joined today by many of my colleagues from around campus. I'll have them introduce themselves in just a moment. So again, we're really excited to have you here. And so our first panelists will introduce themselves, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mary to start us off. Mary, if you would, by the way, if you would, please share your name, the role at the college, your pronouns if you're so inclined, and then just a small little overview about how you support students throughout their first year at Reed.
Thank you, Carnell. My name is Mary James, and I am the Dean for Institutional Diversity and a professor of physics. And my pronouns are she, her, hers. First of all, I want to welcome all of you, parents, guardians, and friends of our Reed students. I want to welcome you to the Reed community and to thank you for all you have done to support and nurture the extraordinary young people who joined the Reed community this fall. The mission of the Office for Institutional Diversity is that students from every identity, background, and lived experience develop a deep sense of belonging to this community that allows them to thrive both academically and socially. We believe in the power of an intimate, high-touch residential college experience in supporting students to reach beyond their current paradigms in approaching, fleshing out, and solving problems. As I noted in convocation, your students have, for the most part, grown up and been educated in communities segregated by race, ethnicity, and class. This does not prepare them well to engage across these differences, and yet we have brought them together across these differences so that they can learn to live, communicate, study, work, and play with others unlike themselves. I talked to your students in a session just before this one about the commitment that that makes, and one of the things I asked them to do was that we're all well trained in what I call predatory listening. That is, we listen to other people, and what we're really doing in our own minds is, do I agree with them? Do I disagree with them? And if I agree with them, then how can I support their arguments? If I disagree with them, how can I dismantle their arguments? As opposed to sympathetic listening, in which we put aside what we think and we actually engage in thinking about and focusing our attention on what the other person thinks. Why do they think what they think? What motivates them? Are they motivated by excitement? Are they motivated by fear? Are they motivated by a strong sense of social justice? What is it that motivates them? And then to actually practice, how could I support their argument even though I disagree with it? What about this argument does make sense? What is at the root of their position? And so I asked them to begin to engage in sympathetic listening and told them that it's actually a really hard practice. So what the Office for Institutional Diversity will be reinforcing for our students is this ability to actually stop and think hard about the perspectives of others, the identities of others, how their myriad identities intersect to form their lived experience, how knowing more about their lived experience can enrich my life and my perspectives. The office includes myself, an associate dean for institutional diversity who focuses on training for students and training and professional development for staff and faculty, Cami West. Jessica Chi, the assistant director for institutional diversity, who oversees two student-facing offices. And those are the Multicultural Resource Center. The Multicultural Resource Center is both something of a refuge for students from marginalized groups to form affinity communities to support one another, but also to celebrate those groups and to include all of the campus in those celebrations. So many students are employed by the Multicultural Resource Center to develop programming for the entire community to participate in. And the second is our SEEDS Office for Community Engagement. And that program invites students to be involved and active in the Portland community in the service of others. And not only to think of themselves as in service, but always think of themselves as learning from the people with whom they're serving. So we're extremely excited to have your students here, and we've now conducted 2 of our 4 inclusive community workshops. And I must say, I've just been so impressed with how your students have engaged, how seriously they've taken participating in the workshops, how generous they've been with each other, how gracious they've been with one another. And I think it bodes very well for them having a really expansive educational experience here at Reed. So again, thank you for sending them to us.
Great, I will go next. For those of you, I think a number of people came in after Mary James started speaking, but welcome to the Supporting Student Success panel. We're going around and introducing ourselves, and then you can submit questions in the chat box. My name's Amy. I'm the Associate Dean of Student and Campus Life. I use she and her pronouns. I oversee student engagement and orientation, as well as residence life. So as you can imagine, we are very busy right now welcoming all of your first year and transfer students to on campus. It has been a really exciting last 2 weeks, and something like we have never kind of expected before. So I really just kind of appreciate the humor and resiliency that many of your students have demonstrated so far. I'm sure some of the questions will come to me in the chat, as I know there's lots of questions about what it's like to live on campus, but I really want to highlight that we have a ton of activities that the orientation team has put together this week, both virtually and socially distanced in person, so students can engage in different ways, as well if they're not on campus right now, whether living off campus in Portland or studying remotely. In addition, we also have a number of student house advisors and residence life who will be kind of reaching out individually to your students to form one-on-one connections with them as well. We recognize Reedies like to build community in many different ways, and we actually sometimes attract more introverted students than other places as well. So we find a lot of students really resonate with this one-on-one relationship building that they can build with their student house advisor in their community. And I am going to turn it over to the next person.
Which is me. Thanks, Amy. Hi, welcome. My name is Julie Maxfield. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Associate Dean of Students for Academic Life. That means that I and the team that I work with support student academic success. We work really closely with faculty on that. And this is a quick PS. If you didn't catch the faculty session that aired at 1 p.m. today, Pacific Standard Time, you should definitely check the recording. They talked a lot about all of the really great imaginative work they've done this summer to be ready for the fall, and I found it really inspiring. So I encourage you to watch that. Yeah, so the Academic Life cluster in student life supports students in their academic journey starting in the first year. That includes the transition to the Reed learning environment, or in this case, environments, as folks are experiencing a hybrid way of learning. And then beyond that, we help students explore an interdisciplinary set of questions through the HUME 110 curriculum. We help students as they think about the pathway to declaring a major, computing the junior qualifying exam, the thesis. So lots of support for the whole year. And all that support will be available virtually this semester to make sure that folks in different places are able to access it. And so they can't complain that the dojo is too far away from the residence hall, because that was a thing in the non-virtual world. So programmatically, this looks like peer tutoring. So we have a lot of tutoring that normally would have happened in this building way on one side of campus. And instead that'll be happening virtually, both in an individual and in a drop-in group format. So folks that are looking for collaborative space and to meet majors in their field can go to drop-in tutoring for that, or one-on-one tutoring. Academic support also offers workshops on topics that students might want to talk about together and think through and problem solve as a team. So things like, how are you setting up your workstation, or managing distractions and using your calendar these days? So those are some workshops that academic support will offer. And then academic support also does individual coaching. So any student can say, these are my particular things that I'm working on, that I'm wanting help with, and accountability towards. And so a staff member can work with them on an individual plan to tighten up some skills. So the support we offer really is individualized to the student. We try to let the student tell us what they need rather than tell them what they think, what we think they should do. And so that means we work with folks wherever they're at in their academic journey and their pathway to academic maturity. My cluster of academic life also provides some support of a specialized nature to students with disabilities and to international students. So I'll talk about that real briefly as well. Students with disabilities include physical, sensory disabilities, learning, attentional, the stuff that you think about maybe most commonly, but also mental health conditions and chronic health conditions. So a wide variety of students access that service. And we provide classroom and housing accommodations and other sort of access points to make sure that students can take full advantage of the academic program at Reed. Disability and accessibility resources also works with campus partners across campus to improve awareness and access issues around. So lots of good work they're doing. And then international students have their own needs as well, right? So visa advising, which has been a little tricky lately, if you follow the news, you may know. But there's also particular needs of folks that may be still working on English as their second language or third language. So writing and composition and conversation help available, mentorship help, cultural adjustment support, ways to share out and experience other folks' cultures. And then that office also serves as an advocate for international students. So we need to be thinking about what it means to be a Reed student in a very different time zone right now, for example, or to be a student with travel restrictions. So this cluster supports the particular academic needs of students with disabilities and international students, but also the academic transitions for all students. We do that in partnership with faculty. And I'll just note real quick that all students at Reed have a faculty advisor who supports their registration and enrollment and progress towards the degree. So in addition to all the great stuff I mentioned, they also get a one-on-one faculty relationship. So I'm happy to answer questions in that general realm, and I will pass it now to Carrie. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Julie. Oh, and by the way, someone has asked what the dojo is. I thought before you passed it along to me, you could tell folks what the dojo is.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, we're real bad with our acronyms here at Reed. So the dojo is a shorthand for the Dorothy Johansson House, the physical building where academic support and disability and accessibility resources are located. As I mentioned, services will be virtual, so no need to trek over to the dojo yet, but you can explore it on the edge of campus.
Thanks, Julie. I'm Carrie Baldwin-Sayer. I am the Associate Dean of Students for Health and Wellbeing. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. Some of you were on our COVID information session yesterday. But I am somewhat new to Reed. I joined the Reed community in January, only 2 months before COVID struck. So it's been a wonderful onboarding and really wonderful to see how our community came together to support students. I've never seen anything like it, and I was just floored at the ability for this team to figure out what was necessary and get it done. So I'm really thrilled to be here. And I have a variety of departments that will be supporting your students. First of all is the, we call it AFOP, which stands for Athletics, Fitness, and Outdoor Programs. And that includes our on-campus sports center, which we are planning to have a soft opening of later in September. And we are going to have a very safe experience, a gymnasium fitness center experience for your students. Also, you may know that your students have a physical education requirement. So there are a great variety of virtual and some in-person PE classes that will be available this year. Our instructors and coaches have gotten incredibly creative about what they're doing. Some things they've already made available to students while they're here in quarantine. So I'm really happy that the students have some nice physical options to do while they're in their rooms for a few days. Also, underneath my umbrella is the Health and Counseling Center. And the Health and Counseling Center offers both physical and mental health care. And we're having a parent-family orientation Zoom Q&A tomorrow that will be very specifically all about the HCC, or Health and Counseling Center offerings. So I'd encourage you all to join that. There's also, on the orientation page, there's a way to submit questions in advance. So that's an opportunity to really dive into things if you'd like to join us there. Also, we have a program called SHARE, which is Sexual Health Advocacy and Relationship Education. And this is a team of staff and very well-trained student advocates who are there to advocate for students, answer their questions around sexual and relationship health, talk to them and be supportive in incidences of sexual assault, and really help students navigate if that becomes something that's necessary. So they're very well trained, and I'm very happy for the services that they can provide. That group is also providing a service this year to help educate students about face mask wearing and social distancing in a very supportive and educational way. And I'm very excited that that group has also been able to pivot to provide student employment for that sort of peer education and peer advocacy work that we'll need this year in regards to public health. I think I can pass it along to Gary.
Great, thanks, Carrie. My name is Gary Granger. I use he, him. I'm the director of the Office of Community Safety here at Reed College. Community safety is our term for what you may have known as campus police, campus security, public safety, and other institutions. We are not a police department. We don't have any armed officers. We approach our work more as a community safety, restorative justice, harm reduction mission here on the campus. One of the ways we support your students when they come here is by being a 24-hour-a-day hub of information and service. And so we don't provide most of the services on campus, but we have access to the people who do. And so if there's one thing you take away, I would say recommend to your student, if they say, well, I don't know how to do this or go a certain place, or I'm lost, or I can't figure something out, particularly if it's after hours, if they call us, we will almost certainly be able to get them in touch with someone who can give them what they need. We're also a hub for a lot of important services after hours. So students who need medical attention or need emotional support, we are a good resource to help them find what they need after hours. Beyond that, we do the things you might usually expect. We register bicycles. We also do enforce policies like our alcohol and other drug policies. We have a role to play in Title IX here at the college, and the other things you might expect of an office like ours. Just the basic campus safety and security practices here on campus. We have a dispatcher on duty 24 hours a day, as well as officers in the field to help out with a variety of things. And so, again, if you remember one thing about us, let your student know that we're here 24 hours a day, and we are very happy to take their call, or they can come by our building. We're here all the time, and we can help them get what they need. And I think I'll hand it off to Alice.
I think it's me. First, I want to test my microphone. Better? Can you all hear me? Great. Parents, hi, I'm Alice Harra. I'm the director of the Center for Life Beyond Read. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm going to outline the services for the first year students. But first, I really want to say congratulations to you and to your Reedy. Reed is such a great foundation for their future. I have had the honor and joy and pleasure of watching now 5 classes graduate. I've been here 5 years. And to see them graduate into really competitive destinations with highly desirable skills. And so part of our mission is to meet students where they are, even in their first year, and to teach them how to shape their narrative and translate their Read education to others while at and beyond Read. And so the first thing I want you to remember about Life Beyond Read is that we're not after Read. We help students plan for the 3 summers and 4 winter breaks while they're here. Center for Life Beyond Read is what some campuses would call a career center, but we do more than career advising. So that's the second thing I just wanted you to know. We also do graduate, pre-professional, med, law, and MBA, and nationally competitive fellowship advising. So how does this affect your first year student? It's a holistic and integrated approach to advising that we've created. We don't want to bifurcate graduate school from jobs from fellowships. We want your student, even from the first year, to see how they can develop the confidence and the skills and the connections to consider all 3 of those as possibilities at and beyond Read. And we developed a very Read-like advising model here based on communities of purpose. So we don't ask a first-year student, it wouldn't be developmentally appropriate to say, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? Instead, we ask them, what excites them? What do they find purposeful? And so we find that even first-year students can very easily tell us if it's sustainable life on Earth or arts and expression, or education and human potential, or investing in financial responsibility, or the care and cure of illness, or a myriad of other communities. And so what this means to your first year student is that they will likely have one CLBR advisor throughout their Reed tenure who can help them gain clarity around their purpose, shape their narrative, practice interviewing for on-campus jobs or internships or full-time jobs or fellowships or grad school or professional school. We love tracking them all the way through. We also teach them how to make connections with the Reed Global alumni community. So it's not enough to know how to write a resume, you have to know who to send it to. And so finally, one thing that we do with our first year students is our peer career advisors are trained sophomore, juniors, and seniors who help the first years really focus on the transition from high school to college, particularly in the resume sort of space, so that first year students can be competitive for campus jobs and clubs and research and funding, all things that they can do in their first year. So I'm happy to answer any more questions, or I'll put in a quick plug that for those of you who are hiring managers or you work for a company who is seeking great talent, I can help you hire a Reedy. I turn to others.
Great. Thanks, Alice. Hi, everyone. My name is Britt Q. Hoover. I'm the Assistant Dean for Student Support, and I've been at Reed for about 10 years now. My role at the college is to coordinate support for students who may be experiencing personal hardships or other challenges getting in the way of their success. So I work individually with students to help them problem solve obstacles and find solutions and resources at the right time in the right place. As part of my role, I also have the pleasure of chairing the Reed Care Team. The Reed Care Team proactively coordinates resources and support for students who may be experiencing personal, interpersonal, or academic issues at the college. This year, I also have the pleasure of overseeing quarantine and isolation support for students. And lastly, I coordinate the Reed After Hours support system. So as Gary Granger of Community Safety mentioned, we have 24/7 support for students. After hours, there is an on-call team that works closely with Community Safety and includes live-in professional staff who respond to timely or other student emergencies after hours. Be happy to answer questions about that today. Welcome.
Thank you all for sharing a little bit about what your areas are doing. So just to give you a little rundown of how we're going to structure the rest of our time together. As you probably are aware, we're asking for your questions. We want to know what you want to hear from us. And so I would ask that if you have questions that you would like to ask the panel, please use the chat box on Zoom. And again, if there's time, we'll try to answer all the questions that are coming in, but there are quite a few of you on there, and the questions are already coming in. So we're going to go ahead and just dive into some of the questions that you all are asking. So our first question up is actually about a question around, as parents, what should we not do that may hinder our student? So I'll give this one over to our panelists. What are things that parents should not do that may hinder their student?
I don't know if this would be in the area of hindering, but I will say maybe offering students the opportunity to learn how to be on their own at colleges, to resist the urge, which I've had to do many times. I have two college daughters, to help them solve the problems that come in front of them, and encourage them to seek some of us out so that they can work with us to solve the problems or answer the questions. It's tempting for those of us who have navigated the world for a much longer time to say, oh, well, just go this direction or take this course or do this thing. Everyone on the screen is here to help your student figure stuff out and figure out how to figure things out. And so I would say, refer them back to us with their questions and their concerns and so forth as a first starting point.
I'll just add that I think it's helpful for parents and family members to ask students when they're sharing that they might be encountering difficult times. Are you looking for some advice? Are you looking for me to do something to help you? Or are you just looking for me to listen? It can be really helpful to clarify for them why they're sharing this information with you and what they're hoping you can provide. Because I think it's really easy as parent and family members to hear a student having challenges and want to just jump in and solve the problem. But what they might be looking for from you is that love and empathy that only a parent or family member can provide. And I have found that a helpful way of clarifying from the student what they need in that moment.
I'll throw out another question for you all. This one is from Barbara, who's asking about, for the more introverted students in this socially distanced situation, how are you pushing them to go outside their comfort zone and not isolate once quarantine is over?
I'll start with that one. I think that's a great question because I think it's particularly challenging right now with so many virtual options, and in the fact that often students can engage in some social activities, but even their academic program kind of through this virtual screen. I do think a lot of it will kind of take place with the academic program and how their classes are structured, particularly if they're taking Hume 110, which all first year students are, and in particular their conference class, where there's a group of a little over 10 students that will really learn to dialogue and talk critically about things. And I think that is a really foundational thing that Reed students do, where it's really the foundation for their academic experience here and really learning to kind of interact with their peers in that way. As far as the social side, I think we offer a really kind of wide range of opportunities. As I kind of joked earlier, we do attract introverted students. So we often are trying to provide programs and opportunities for them that aren't large groups and that are really kind of like low barriers, or not low barriers, but very easy to access for them. Like, whether it's picking up like a grab and go arts and crafts thing or something like that. I think also we're trying out a lot of new things. We're trying to figure out kind of what is working for our students right now. We've had some things like, for example, we had a escape room the other night that went over pretty well, but one of our most popular activities so far during orientation has been a trivia night offered by one of our econ professors, which was really interesting as well. And ultimately, I really think kind of being able to access those one-on-one relationships, particularly with a faculty advisor, maybe your Hume conference leader, or even maybe your house advisor, or perhaps another kind of peer leader on campus. We have a lot of different kind of peer leader positions, whether they are the share advocate, the share program that Carrie referenced, or an academic tutor, or even mentors through the Multicultural Resource Center, that there are a lot of kind of peer opportunities. And I really find our students get a lot from kind of hearing about the things that others have experienced at Reed.
I think you did a great job, unless, Alice, do you want us to add a little bit to that?
I was just going to say, thank you for asking me. Barbara and all parents of introverts, two things. One is, if they do need a safe and quiet place to practice one-on-one, not necessarily for social engagement, but to apply to a club or a research or to talk to a faculty, we're happy to practice with them. And we're also really good at helping them shape a narrative around their strengths as introverts too, so that they honor and celebrate that reflective ability.
That's important. Folks, I'm an introvert, so I get it. I completely get it. All right, so our next question is actually, and I think, Mary, you may be able to answer this question. It's around the Reed College Climate Survey that was administered in 2012, which was some time ago. Are there plans to re-administer that survey?
The answer is yes. In fact, there's been a committee working all last year on developing a new survey, updating it. We're working particularly on how will we be able to compare the results now to the results in 2012, but also make the survey current to a changing landscape. We were ready to go when COVID hit. So the original timetable was that the staff was going to complete the survey in the summer. The faculty was going to complete the survey in the early fall, and your students were going to complete the survey in early spring term, because we wanted them to have a whole semester on campus before they were commenting on the climate. The plans are on delay right now, partly because this is such an exceptional year, and then we didn't know how we would in any way compare this to the 2012 survey. But having said that, having made the decision to wait probably a year to administer a campus-wide survey, we're working with myself and the Committee on Diversity, which is a faculty committee that in particular thinks about the ways in which the faculty contributes to creating an inclusive campus environment. We're working with the Faculty Committee on Diversity, myself, are working with the faculty departments. And one of the things a number of departments have done in recent years is do department climate surveys. This is particular academic department climate surveys. This is particularly important at Reed because our students so much identify with their academic experience. So whereas, as you know, we don't have a football team, we don't have an elaborate sports program, we don't have fraternities and sororities. So students find a lot of their sense of belonging in their academic programs and departments. So we're asking the Hume 110 for freshmen, the Hume 110 program to think about, to design a climate, sort of a climate in the Hume 110 experience for students, and then all of the academic departments. So, and then that the departments take that information and think about specific ways in which they are going to alter their practices to make an even more inclusive environment for students. And this is part of a greater whole, you know, particularly the extremely difficult moment in which we find ourselves, in which there's a national reckoning around the treatment of in particular Black and brown people, but also of all marginalized people, and how systemic marginalization contributes as opposed to the actions of individuals. This is all part of a much larger strategy on our part. What is it? What's systemic at Reed? Well, how we offer the education. Who does that? The faculties. How are they organized? Into departments. And so we're, in a sense, going down one level, but a level in which all students have a big part of their Reed experience is located at that level. So that's what we're doing this year instead of the broad campus climate survey. And again, we will be in a position to launch that next academic year.
So the next question, I know we've responded already to Brooke's question directly, but I think more parents would probably want to know this, is just wondering about orientation activities for their students and how are students notified about these, and how do they make sure their students are on top of it?
Great question. Oh, I am on. Great question. Orientation started on Sunday, and we have activities the rest of the week. There is a website, if I don't know, maybe Britt, if you wouldn't mind linking it to that would be great. That students can go to, and they need to use their Reed login in order to see all the details of it. So that means at home, you may not be able to see all the details of that. However, we know students like to know about things in different ways. So we've also sent a detailed schedule to them via email, and have a very active kind of Instagram account for the Reed orientation program as well. In addition, I want to share that many of these events are also open to our returning students, particularly the social ones. So I know that was a question that came in over the chat. So definitely there's things like escape rooms and kind of arts activities and stargazing and some other opportunities if some of our returning students want to jump in on those as well.
Thank you. So this next question, I think I'll kind of lead on with both Mary and with Carrie, actually. And this parent said, you know, they've received a tweet from their child, and so far the worst thing about college is having to sign up for things or do things based on their gender identity and having genuinely no idea what to put. What kind of support do you have for those who are struggling with gender identity?
Carrie, do you want to start maybe? Yeah.
Oh, sure. I actually was thinking about precisely what this might have been referring to, because we have a group of sessions during orientation called consent talks. And these are facilitated conversations by trained peers to talk about the idea of consent and relationships. We're also talking about consent in terms of public health nowadays too. But anyway, these conversations, students were signing up with them, up for them by gender, because we found that students of the same gender had very similar questions. And so they had groups that were facilitated that way. And we always have a group also for students who are unsure or don't know, or are just in a transitional place. So I'm hoping that your student did know about that, that there was another option for them that wasn't specifically in regards to their unknown or questioning gender identity. We also have wonderful support services at our Health and Counseling Center for folks who are just, if they just want to talk to a counselor about their questions or their struggles, and for folks who are really know where they're at if they're very interested in gender affirming hormone therapy. That is something that's available at our counseling center as well. But I would definitely say our counseling center is a great place to receive support. So I would reach out or ask your student to reach out if they're interested in getting some support through the counseling center. Mary, do you want to add on anything in that regard, or Alice does?
I will just add again, I think this speaks to us examining our practices, our systems, our structures. So we were an early adopter of students being able to go into our IRIS system, which is their identification, and putting in their preferred pronouns so that they didn't have to disclose those in a public environment if they didn't want to. Students, their preferred name and only their preferred name shows up on class rosters, for instance, and only those who need, for some legal reason, access to their legal name. For instance, if they're filling out financial aid forms, reporting something to that's necessary for the student to be eligible for federal work study, for instance, those kind of things that require the legal name. Otherwise, no one on campus has access to the legal name. And it was surprisingly difficult to do that given how many intricate computer systems we have that interact with each other. But we worked really hard at it, and I think we've been very successful. So we'll continue to do that. Reading this comment, I'll think, okay, let's examine our systems, let's examine our structures, and see how for next year's class this wouldn't happen to a student, even a single student.
And also, just to note that Britt just put a link to our trans and gender nonconforming student FAQ. So if folks want to take a peek at that. And Alice, did you have something you wanted to add?
Only to say to any parent who has any student who feels nonconforming or neurodiversity or anything, that we help them translate and advocate for themselves in the workplace too. So when they get ready to move out and do an internship their first summer or whatever, we can help them think that through.
Since I have you, Alice, this next question is for you. Is there a structured way that your office gets in touch with our first year students, or do they have to reach out to you?
Both and. We do want to teach them independence, and we do hope they do reach out. But the peer career advisors, as I mentioned, are first sophomore, juniors, and seniors who have been sort of aligned with a caseload of students, and they will be doing outreach. They're aligned with not necessarily the residence halls as they were in the past couple of years, but they will be reaching out directly to a set of first-year students. So it's an invitation rather than a request, but hopefully that will be enough to encourage students. We also, on the first week or two, we're running a lot of programming for students who are interested in campus jobs, or who are interviewing for or doing resumes for campus jobs, and they're first-year students. They know that that's part of, we have a location where they're getting their resumes reviewed there.
Thank you. And I think that kind of got to the next question that I was going to ask around, would it be recommended for first year students to try to get a campus job or do a community service project? And if the answer is yes, how much should they be doing? And I think this could apply to a number of us, actually.
I will jump in first and say on the orientation schedule, there are several student work drop-in info sessions that are run by our student work office, and Kate Walford would be happy to talk to your students more about that. Also, the jobs available on campus are a little bit different this year. So Kate has also been running a job matching program to really help students get jobs that maybe perhaps don't know the person or don't know the department that they may be applying to, and trying to do some matching that way. And I'm guessing Alice probably has some tips about kind of things that they help with first year students as far as getting jobs as well.
Yeah, I could just chime in and say, I think it's highly desirable for students to have something going on that is non-academic, that is important to them, that gives them a sense of value and purpose. Not because academics will for sure be harder than they expected, but they might be, and that may not be the same immediate source of pride that they had before. And so having a couple of extra foundational points where a student can see their own growth and progress, and not only being academically defined, I think is really healthy for our students. So each individual student needs to decide how much of that is important, which things they want to try more of, which things they're already really great at and want to continue. But I think it's really wise for our students to have a thing, that at least one thing that is non-academic that's important in their life.
And not to be put off if they don't get a campus job. We can help them think about, there are many other things that they can do. And just in terms of numbers, we tend to say 5 to 10 hours a week because of the academic load here. And for first year students, I would, I would advise, well, that's the number I would put on. I don't know how you all feel, but that's the number I'd put on it.
So this next question is about the typical stages or cycle of becoming a college student and becoming more independent. What do you see as panelists? What are the stages that you see when you're working with students and then becoming more independent?
I will say a big one. I'll just kick it off. Some of you have probably noticed that a lot of emails about residence hall assignments and things happen in the residence halls go directly to your student. That you're not being copied on them as a parent or guardian. And that is kind of one of the deliberate shifts that we try to make as students are entering their career at Reed. So I really see that as kind of one of the beginning stages for a lot of our students as they're entering Reed, to figure out how to navigate things themselves, how to write an email to a professor or pick up the phone and call an office and ask a question about like, what hours are you open, or even kind of the beginning stages of asking for help or assistance. So I think that's really one of the first stages that we start to see that can often be a difficult transition for the student and even the parent itself.
I guess I could chime in here as someone who served as an academic advisor for over 2 decades before taking on this role, and also talking to students about changes they'd like to see at the college. So along the first one, I think my premise was always that I don't expect the student to come to college with all the skills you need to be successful in college. That would be ridiculous. And so every skill that they need, whether it's a formal skill or an informal skill, it's our obligation to help them gain that skill. So what does that look like? So for instance, I would never say to a student, I think you should get a tutor. And that's the end of the conversation. I learned over time that that's not the way to help a student get a tutor. What I say instead is, I think it would be really great for you to consider having a tutor. By the way, there are 200 tutors on this campus. So most students at some time during their time at Reed use a tutor. And many of those become tutors later on. So the first thing to know about using a tutor is that it's not a shameful thing. It's a mark of academic savvy that you know when a tutor would be useful to you. Second thing is, let's go on the website together and look at the possibilities. Oh, look, there's drop-in tutoring. Oh, or you can have a personal tutor. Now, let's look at this list of personal tutors. There are 7 listed for your course. So what we're going to do is you can sit right here and write an email to 5 of them. because 4 of them won't have time to tutor you right now. So, and we don't want to do this serially. We don't want to like write to one and wait 3 days for it to come back and write to the next one and wait for 3 days for it to come back. We're going to write to 5 people right now who look interesting to you on this list. So the first time I take them through the process, just step by step by step. And then I say, I want you to follow up with me in 24 hours and tell me whether you've heard from any of these tutors. And if you haven't, we're going to make a new plan. And I put on my calendar to follow up if they don't follow up. Now, as we go further and further along, I would be encouraging them to be able to do more of those steps on their own. So it's not hand-holding, it's giving people skills. And so I try to reflect on how can I, in this moment, give the student one more skill to be successful in college that they don't already have.
Thank you all. That was great. So the next question up is actually an academic one. Is the student advisor the same person for 4 years? And would they guide and help students manage their workload, cut back, add more, final concentrations, etc.?
Yeah, I can start, and Mary, feel free to chime in. Does that sound okay? So your students were all assigned an academic advisor based on the interests that they thought they had when they were coming in that may or may not change. And so it's not uncommon for students to change academic advisors as they make their way through the curriculum and discover their path. So they may have been originally assigned to someone in biology, and then it turns out that they wind up in chemistry or something like that. That's totally fine. Students can change advisors very easily, and faculty are used to that. So all faculty advise, and all students have an advisor at all times. So there's just a general reshuffling that happens periodically as needed. So the role of the advisor is for sure to help the student manage the degree and major requirements. So there's a meaningful interaction right before enrollment every semester. But more than that, the advisor is there to support the student in making academic decisions. And so if they're thinking that maybe they do need to drop a class, their advisor is going to be part of that conversation. Someone also asked a little bit about if you were pre-med, would you have a different advisor? So know that your academic advisor is there for your years at Reed. And there are lots of other supports to help you think about what you want to do beyond that. So obviously Alice's role in the Center for Life Beyond Reed is part of that. But there are individual faculty who you can go talk to because of their expertise in advising around pre-health or pre-law. And so some students choose to align with those advisors as their academic advisor, but they're available regardless of whether or not, right? So you can be a Spanish major in pre-med, and then you would want to have access to that pre-med advisor in an unofficial capacity, not as your straight up academic advisor. So that seems like enough for now. What about you, Mary? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would just add what we stress to the faculty as they become new academic advisors is that in very many cases, it's appropriate to refer students to other services on campus. And it's not their role to be all things to their advisees, but rather to know what resources are available and point the students there. So I say to my advisees, I won't be able to help you with everything, but I know a lot of people here and I know who to pick up the phone and call. Or if I don't know, I know who to pick up the phone and to call to ask who I should be talking to. So.
Awesome. So this next question is centered around, and this may be more for Gary and Carrie, and it's around really what supports or resources does the college have to ensure the safety of students, whether it's physical safety or emotional safety?
Well, I can start, then maybe Carrie will want to jump in. In terms of the more traditional physical safety and security, as I mentioned before, we operate 24 hours a day, every day of the year, with a dispatch office where there's a person here who will answer the phone 24 hours a day. And we have officers in the field all of the time. We have a lot of the things you expect in a college campus. We have emergency phones across campus. We offer rides or escorts for students who might need that after hours if they're feeling unsafe or just want someone to walk with them. The residence halls are locked at all times and restricted access to only the students who are assigned to live in those buildings. This year, we've closed the campus to the public, and all the facilities on campus are also secured and require card access to get in. So we've put in place a lot of physical security and safety mechanisms on the campus at this point. As I mentioned before, and this might transition to Carrie, in terms of emotional safety and well-being and those sorts of things, my office acts as a hub, an information source, and a triage center, so that if we encounter a student in a residence hall or a building or get a call about someone who's struggling, we very quickly transition from making sure that they're safe and not in immediate danger to getting them to the resources that are more useful to them. And Carrie can probably speak to those.
Sure, I can speak a little bit to, I've already mentioned that we have counseling available to our students free of charge. And we also can intervene in urgent or crisis situations as needed. We always have a counselor on call every day that if there is an urgent need that can't wait for a regularly scheduled appointment, students can certainly call the HCC and be seen same day by a counselor if needed, and or by medical staff if it's more of a physical health issue. So we are absolutely able to do that. But I also want to mention something. Britt, have we talked about the care team yet? Because I thought that was such an important element that I wanted folks to hear about as kind of a lower level of support that we can provide for students that aren't in urgent or crisis need.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. I'd be happy to share with parents the care team and how we operate. So I briefly introduced the care team in my introduction, but as a reminder, the care team is an interdisciplinary team. It's comprised of staff representing departments across student life and includes the Center for Life Beyond Read, Financial Aid, and the Multicultural Resource Center as well. And what we do is we proactively respond and outreach to students who are having difficulties, either finding appropriate resources, finding some guidance or some mentorship or a person to sit down and listen, talk, and help them brainstorm solutions to obstacles they're experiencing. We work together behind the scenes to reduce the need for students to go office to office trying to solve a problem. We feel like that's our job and we can help with that. Any member of the community can refer a student to the care team. That includes faculty, staff, parents and families, and students and peers themselves. And Amy just kindly put in the referral form for you all. That's one of the fastest and most efficient ways to share with us. If you're starting to observe some concerns for your student, or you're noticing they're trying to get some help and they just can't find it, I would encourage you to fill out that form. I screen all referrals, and then I will make sure the right office follows up with that student and outreaches and provides some support. You can also, of course, call me, and my number is listed on that form as well if you'd rather have a phone conversation, or you could request a phone conversation. But again, we represent all parts of the college, and our whole goal is just to be to put out an offer of help for the students and make sure that they can find the right resources at the right time.
I think we have time maybe for one more question, but I just wanted to let parents know that if we're unable to get to all of your questions, feel free to send us an email, and you can send it to Student Life, and that is student-life@reed.edu. We'll put it in the chat so that you have it directly. And just know that someone will get back to you on those questions. So even after this is done and you're like, I have more questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to answer questions for you. So I think for the last question is centered around what have you seen as panelists, the most successful students? What do the most successful students do during their time at Reed? I know that it doesn't, I'm sure they're going to be varying answers.
I'll just start very, very quickly and say, some of the most successful students I've seen do more than just academics. They've come here clearly because they want an academic experience, and they have academic skills. There's so much more to do besides academics, both on campus as well as off campus in the Portland community. And so I would always encourage students to look for something beyond their academics that complements it and supports it, but also is utterly and completely something different to do.
So I would just like to say, first of all, success, it can be defined in a lot of different ways. And so one of our goals here is to help students define success on their terms. And So, and I think for me, the most successful students, the students I've had the most pleasure of working with, particularly as an advisor who's had a student maybe all 4 years, is that they come to use their strengths to protect themselves against their weaknesses, if you will. So that I've had students who come with all kinds of different challenges, and the most successful are those who, when we can sit down and say, this challenge is real, it's not going away. And what our job now is to figure out, how can you proceed with your education in the face of this challenge? Not it's too bad you have this challenge, or you're not as successful because you have this challenge. But what can we do? What strengths can we use that you have to help you both have this challenge and complete this program at the same time? And those are the ones that I have the biggest smile when they cross the stage at graduation.
There's a lot in what Mary just said in there about having a growth mindset. I think that whatever you're aiming for, being open to challenge, seeing challenge as growth, and not something to run away from or a sign that you don't belong here or something like that. I think that that's really key. Students who have a harder time thriving at Reed, in my experience, are the ones that have a more fixed mindset, who come in with a preconceived idea of what they can and cannot do and try to sort of stay in that lane. So, so I resonate, or a lot of what Mary said resonates with me as well. And I think as parents, encouraging your students to try new things, like that might even just be straight up PE, but encouraging students to try new things is part of building their growth mindset and supporting them through that. So yeah, that's enough for me.
Well, this has come to our time. And so again, thank you all for being here. And again, our team is here to provide support to you as you help your student navigate this first year and beyond. And so again, thank you for your time. And again, we look forward to hopefully seeing you at some point down the road. Have a great day.